Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Over Matter podcast. I'm your host, Laura Dockrell, and today I have a much anticipated guest with me. He is an entrepreneur, a brand builder, a social media mogul, my friend. Please welcome Kiefer Nazareth.
Damn,
Hi, Kiefer.
That was a way better intro than I thought. So
Honestly, this Starbucks drink has me feeling a little bit more energized than what I initially anticipated coming in here. Nice. How's it going?
It's going good. I'm excited for today. First video podcast.
I know, first video podcast. This is going to be like a huge shift in the way I view this because I feel like this actually makes things like official for the podcast.
Exactly.
So I'm really excited about it. Okay, I'll get right into this with you. So you are probably one of the most entrepreneurial people that I know. Like even before I met you, I saw what you were doing online and I'm like, this guy just does not seem to stop. He's constantly on the go. Have you always been this way ever since you were a little boy when it comes to being as driven and entrepreneurial as you are?
A little boy, I like that one. I think so. Obviously, I always reflect back and I feel like elementary school, I was always doing something, whether it was like selling candy, pop, things like that to people. Yeah. High school, I was selling like iPhone cases, fixing iPhones, hats, jerseys, like just random stuff. So I think I always had that entrepreneurial spirit. I also think that when it was funny because now look back, I'm like, that was a funny answer. But if someone said like, what do you want to do for a living? I'm like, I just want to own a business. And it's like, what business? I'm like, I have no idea. Yeah. But I'm going to own a business one day. So yeah, I want to say yes.
Tailoring it towards that. Yeah, no, that's crazy. That doesn't surprise me at all. I can totally see you like being on like the elementary school field, like trading your snacks with people or
the
like
recess
selling candy
guy,
and
you know,
stuff.
how he opens up his,
was that literally you? Is that how young you started like doing all this?
Yeah, I was I think I was the plug back in the day. Whatever you need, I can get.
That's crazy. So, what do you think inspired you to like become a person like that who is constantly like grinding? What was the inspiration there?
Yeah, I feel like there's a few things, but I think the main one was I just wanted to. My mom used to do this weird thing when I was younger, where any money I would get, she would take 75% of the money and not keep it, but save it. But for me at that age, I was like, she's taking my money. So imagine me making, let's say my first job, my paychecks were like $200 every 2 weeks. And she would take $150 of that. So imagine me with $50 and I was like, what the hell? What can I do with this money? So I think at that point I was like, I need to start making my own. And just how my brain works is always looking at opportunities and different ways to make some sort of money. And I just kept going from there. And like I said, I started with candy and then iPhone, like the value of the products just kept going up.
Yeah. And do you think that if it wasn't for your mom, like pretty much putting that boundary between that money that you were making, that you would have still had that mindset? Like how valuable do you think that lesson was to you at that age?
Yeah, I think it was, I definitely think it was valuable because growing up, I never had like entrepreneur, like mentors or aunts, uncles, no one that was in that place. So I didn't even know that world existed. Yeah. So yeah, I think without my mom doing that, and she did that for a reason, like it was to save for school and all these other things. So
yeah, I was going to ask you that as the next question. Did that get reinvested into you? Okay.
Yeah. So everything she took was so like when I went to like post-secondary, like or like university, college, whatever, it was all paid for because she was saving money since I was
smart.
Like 10. So.
And I think that's like what's so interesting too is like it really just goes to show you so much in life is just about strategy. Like she could have just let you keep that money and like you could have done whatever you wanted with it, but like knowing that there was that plan in place, it always like probably made both of you guys like feel better. And it's just like you knowing that there was like so much to come with that. That's really smart. I'm going to start doing that. I want to do that with my kids. My mom did offer to do that with me, but she asked me, she was like, do you want me to put away half your money? But at 6 years, or not 6, but I don't know. Like
whenever you started getting money as Christmas gifts, birthdays, all that
12
stuff.
years old. I'm like, no, like what's the significance of you taking away half of this? Like, and you don't realize until you're older and you see the state of the economy, what it takes to buy a house, what it takes to like start something on your own. But I have cousins that did that as well. My one cousin bought her first house when she was like 25 because she had like that money put away, which is crazy.
Smart. I wouldn't take 75% though. That's just torture. But
that's
my
crazy.
mom's watching this. Thank you.
Yeah. No. It turned you into who you are today. When it comes to Kiefer and your younger self, of course, it sounds like you had a great set of parents as well who really helped instill a lot of these values in you. But what kind of advice would you give to your younger self if you had him here today?
Yeah, this question I have, like, it's a fresh question that I just recently answered because I went to a men's, it was a conscious communication dinner, and this was the first question that came up. So my whole advice to my younger self is just trust the process. I think when I was, whatever, 16, 17, 18, I was always like stressing about what's next, what I need to do, constantly worrying like, okay, I'm turning older, I need to do this, need to do that. And it's like, now I look back and I'm like, I just need to trust the process more. And it's like, as long as you set those targets, goals, and you're working towards them every day, I think that's what matters most.
Yeah. What is your process when it comes to building out your goals and what you want to achieve for the future? Because I've seen you do this a lot online, especially with Ange, your girlfriend. You guys in the new year, like, had, I think it was champagne bottles that you guys had, and you put your goals on there and you're like, once we achieve these, we're going to pop them together. Do you have like a cadence when it comes to the goals that you set? Is it a yearly basis, monthly basis, weekly?
So we have obviously our long-term goals, like where we want to be. I think our long-term we look at it as like a 5-year marker.
Yeah.
We don't announce those online. Those are things that we just kind of keep personal within ourselves. But then we'll break it down on like, okay, if we try to achieve this in 5 years, what are we trying to achieve in year 1?
Yeah.
So, and then that's what you saw online is like, okay, what's our year 1 goals? And then essentially it's like, the question comes back down to, we'll break it down. And if this smaller goal leads back to that main objective, like, yep, we write it in there. So what you saw online, we basically bought some champagne bottles and we're like, let's just write whatever 10, 15 of our goals on there. Through it was physical, it was mentally, spiritually, just things that we wanted to achieve within the year. And then the idea was we pop a bottle every time one of those goals are done, we pop the bottle, we celebrate in the moment, and then move forward and go to the next goal. So
I love that. And is there any sort of blueprint that you work off of when you comes to that? Like, did you take that from somewhere that you saw, or when it comes to breaking those goals down?
I feel like I may have saw that in like a TikTok video or something, and I was like, so just the tactical way of what we do. So we'll basically list out the annual goals that go back to our 5-year plan. Then we take those annual goals and we'll break them down into quarterly, like, tasks essentially. And then from there we just kind of check them off, and we basically do a 2-week check-in with each other, and we just give our updates on every goal. So
I love
it's
that.
fun because it keeps us accountable, but also, like, let's say a month goes by, so it's 2 check-ins and there's no movement on something, it kind of is a kick in my butt to be like, okay, it's time to start doing this stuff.
Something I love about you too is I love how you make a lot of your fitness goals, for example, online and like visible to your community, because it helps keep you in check. And I feel like it motivates me. Like, I'll see you online, like, go for, I think right now you have a challenge of working your way up to 5K for a run. And I love seeing you post about that, because I'm like, this is so sweet. Like, it's so refreshing. Like, you never see someone be that raw and open and vulnerable about like the struggle that it does take to get to a goal that to some may seem like smaller or not that big, but to see someone like put it out there and like really put into perspective for others and like have that mindset behind it, I think is like a make or break. And I think it also helps like build community around what you're trying to achieve. Have you found that with like things that you do put online and decide to share with people when it comes to your goals?
I like to keep people, like, this whole thing about trusting the journey, even enjoying the journey. Like, I like to keep people in the loop of what I'm doing. I think it builds community. I think it, again, you said it keeps me accountable. So the idea here, because like right now that you said the 5K under 30, like, that's not a hard thing to do. But I don't run ever. So it's like, so I'm just showing them, I'm like, yo, this is my first day running. I did it in 50 minutes and then I did it in 49. And I think the biggest purpose of that is not just to keep myself accountable, but just to motivate and inspire people around me to also try something that they are not maybe used to or want to try that they haven't started.
Yeah. And I think something important there too is like, people think that just because that seems again, maybe insignificant to someone else, 5K, but I ran a 5K actually in June for the first time running since like, I don't know, high school. And like, let me tell you, that shit was hard. Like if you're not used to it, like you're grinding out there, like it takes time to like build it up.
Did you train?
Yeah, I did. But I didn't have like I was working with an online trainer at the time, and he put in like, he put in the workouts into my plan that he had for me. So what it was is like I would run for 10 minutes and then take a minute break, and then run another 10 and take a 2-minute break. And then the next week after that, it would be, okay, now we're going to run for 15 minutes and take a 2-minute break. And then it would just like slowly progress in that sense. So it wasn't, can I run 5K? It's like how much can I run within the time frame that he had given me? And I think that's really important too. And speaking on the concept of community and having accountability partners like that, it just goes to show too, like, if I were to do that on my own, I would be so hard on myself of being like, holy, why is this so hard? Why is running 1K so hard when I have a friend that just ran a goddamn marathon? Like, what's happening? But it would just be on him to be like, give yourself grace. Like, this is the first time you're doing this in so long. Like, you can't expect yourself to get it right away. Do you get a lot of positive feedback from people when you post about that? Because I know, like, personally for me, I love, like, I find that really inspiring how you do that. Because it's vulnerable and it's rare.
Yeah, I get a ton. Like sometimes it's overwhelming because it's like
you're the only one I know personally that does stuff like that. It's crazy.
Yeah, I like to put those challenges out there. I think I don't know if you ever saw my speed bag one where I was
yeah.
So I did a 30-day speed bag. I was like
just like ripping the box.
The day one was the worst thing. I recorded it and I was like this. I that was the first time I was like, maybe I shouldn't post this. Like this is actually embarrassing. And then I waited till I did like day 5 and I was like, wow, I'm getting better. So I'm like, cool, let me actually do it.
You know what I think is more embarrassing though? Like not trying.
Exactly.
Like for people to just be like, oh, fuck it. Like it's too hard.
Yeah.
Like that's what's embarrassing. Like
and
not putting it out there.
A big part of it is a lot of people don't post this stuff because they're either embarrassed or they fear what other people say. And I think I'm super comfortable and super like, I love who I am. So I'm not afraid to share what I do and this come up to that. So
no, and I'll be honest, when I didn't know you and when I first met you, I was like, what's this guy's deal? Like he posts, like you were posting like restaurants all the time. And I was like, he's like 25 or whatever you were at the time. I was like, does he not go out? Does he not like party? Like, does he not do this or that? And like, as I got to know you and as I like became closer with you and learned more about like your objectives and your goals and like what you kind of were inspired by, I was like, okay, this is sweet. Like, and I love how you have that mindset of like, you don't care. And I think it's like also too, I've known you for the past 3 years of my life. And obviously in that time, like we're in our like later 20s, early 30s, like we're maturing and growing in that time. And it was almost like at that time you were around closer to my age, whereas now like we're both older. And I'm just like now coming to see like, no, like it's so inspiring and refreshing. And I actually like, I would prefer to follow someone like yourself who like shares this kind of content rather than someone that's like DJing, partying. Like it's really not as romanticized as like what people think to be, like think for it to be, right?
Yeah, because I noticed I noticed with the with social media, it's always highlights. So it's like
exactly
the wins and everything. So I was like, let me take a different approach and show people all the come up versus the highlights. Because I'm like, the highlights are good, but I never want to be that guy that's like, look at me on a boat while you're at home. Yeah. Right? So it's like...
Oh, and we all know those people.
Yeah. So it's like... Or whatever it is. I'd rather be that one to be like, this is how I got to being on a boat versus me on the boat.
Exactly. I hear you. It's playing the long game, right? And when it comes back to that, like when you come back to reflecting on like your goals from, let's say, the past 5 years to where you are now, what do you think are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned within your business, both on like your personal side and like with work as well? Like, what would you say are some of the biggest lessons you've learned?
This is a good one because I think one of the things that I've learned, especially this year, is like, and I think you've said this. You said this in a meeting. Who'd you say this? I'm not going to say the client, but you said this in a meeting where you're like, I'm going to butcher the quote. What's the quote on
for candy
going
box?
Faster?
Yeah. So
the
candy box quote. So Daryl said this in our like Monday morning meeting. Go alone and you'll go faster. Go together and you'll go farther. Yeah.
So that's something that I've always thought of because I'm like the first couple years of what we were doing, it was always just me and Ange, and we're like, let's figure it out, let's do that, and then I realized that, hey, once we start sharing our vision, once we start telling people what we want to do and getting them to help us get there, like we just went way quicker, way faster. And it also is more enjoyable because it's not just us two enjoying the rewards of what we've done. It's like we have a team now that also gets to see this and experience this climb.
Did that overwhelm you at all? The thought of like having more than just becoming like shifting from being a solopreneur to an entrepreneur. Did that like scare you at all when it came to like knowing that you'll have like other people working on something that you've built, your time, your energy, it's like your baby. You put so much time and attention to it and then handing that off to someone else. Like what was that like?
Two thoughts that come to my head. Number one, no one ever tells you the stress. There's stress of building a business and then there's stress of having to pay people.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Talk about it.
It's a weird feeling. Yeah. So it's it's just like the stress is a different one where it's like now I have to pay people to do stuff and I need to make sure every month I have money to pay these guys, whatever.
And how did you sort that? Did you have like an accountant or someone helping you with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's where I was going to go with the second part of this, where it's like just bringing in the right people to consult and help you get to places faster. So it's like, I don't know bookkeeping, accounting. I don't know how to do PR. I don't know how to do like admin stuff. So it's like, let me bring people in that's what they do to help me get to places faster. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was talking to, I actually heard on a podcast the other week, it was actually like Michael Bostic, the guy that we were just talking about, saying how when you get to a certain place as an entrepreneur, your time becomes your most valuable asset. And I've heard people of success talk about this a lot where let's say, you know, you're a salesperson and you're doing sales meetings from 12 to 5 p.m. And you normally what you would do is like stop at 5 and go to the grocery store, pick up your groceries for the week and then come home, cook. And that takes another 2 hours. If you think about it, it may be in the long run more beneficial to hire someone to do that task for you so that you're able to go head down and like put your energy and your time towards still building your business through like, you know, continuing those sales calls, those cold calls, because within that time, let's say you capture a 5K deal and then within the time of you going to grab groceries and stuff, you're spending, I don't know, $200 on groceries for the week. It's like your time becomes more valuable when you're able to put that time back into like what you value. And it sounds like that's the same sort of topic, right?
Yeah, and that's what we did when we scaled the team or brought people on. I think the first time, like, I don't even know how many years ago, but the first time I made like $200 an hour, I was like,
damn.
I'm like, damn, $200 an hour is a lot of money.
He's
like
ballin'.
At that time, I was like, and
then
I
like,
thought
Mom
about
can't take away the 75% anymore.
Exactly.
She's
exactly. But I thought
probably
about
made it easier to share the wealth, right?
I know.
You get to that point.
So when I made whatever, I don't even know if it was two, it was a couple $100, and I was like, why am I doing this $10 or $15 an hour task? I'm like, that doesn't make sense anymore. Because I'm like, if I just focus on just doing the same task that's going to make me $200-300 an hour, whatever it is, why spend time on something that makes me that's paying me $15 an hour? So at that point we were like, okay, let's map out like an org chart of everything we do and the team members that would help us get to where we want to get, and then let's just outsource stuff and let's do that. So I haven't even, like, besides our team, there's a ton of stuff in our house that we outsource too. So like we have a cleaning lady because Ange and I spend, or when we were cleaning, it was like you spend a couple hours a week cleaning. No one's ever happy after we're done cleaning. And I was like, for $100 to pay someone, or 100, whatever we pay this cleaning lady, I'm like, it just makes sense. So same thing with like our grass and landscaping, snow removal, just literally anything that we can now. So basically how our rule of thumb is like, hey, if it costs $100 or less to pay someone else to do it, like, let's just get them to do it, and we'll focus on anything over $100 and focus on
so
that
smart
stuff.
Something I think about that too, that's probably a huge advantage point, is like that takes away now any sort of conflict that, oh no, okay, you clean the bathrooms and I'll clean the kitchen. Like it just takes away like any sort of stress that would come to like you guys having to negotiate that piece too, right? Like it's just something that you don't have to worry about, which is like really, really nice. Did you ever hire the chef?
We do meal prep.
Okay.
Chef one day, I wish. That's
I know
the
you're talking
goal.
about that. You're like personal chef. That's
I
coming
think
up
that's
next.
the
Like,
we said there's two things that it's like, hey, the day that we know we made it is the day where I have a personal chef and a masseuse that comes in daily just to
oh
like
my God, that'd be
stretch
sick.
us out, relax us when we,
That's
so
baller.
we're not even close to that yet. But
That's fine. But the day you guys see Kiefer with a chef on
exactly.
social
You
media
heard it here first.
is the day that he's made it. I love it. I mean, I would say you've already made it quite far, but that's great. I love hearing that. Okay, I want to shift gears here a little bit. So I would love for you to talk about your online brand persona of Mr. Social Eats. So this is your online personal brand and how I first discovered you as well. You did a lot of food content online, going to restaurants, trying new stuff, creating content for local restaurants, people online. How did the idea of this brand come to be? Was there some sort of big idea behind it? How did that come to fruition?
Yeah, and this is, remember that story I was saying with the $200 an hour? This is how it all started. So
Oh,
we were at a
hell yeah. Let's get
restaurant.
into it.
We were at a restaurant in Brampton, and I was just super amazed with the food. I was excited. It was like a Portuguese smokehouse, and I was like, I was just amazed with it. And I was down the street from my house, and the chef had come to speak to us, and I was just like, how long has this place been here? And he basically was like, yeah, we've been here for almost a decade now. And I was like, I've grown up in Brampton, never heard about you guys.
Yeah.
And so I had asked him, I'm like, I've never heard about you guys. Like, how have you stayed under the radar? And he's like, hey, we just don't have time to do any marketing, none of that. So then as a joke, I was like, oh, I'll post on your social media, because I was already starting to post like pictures of my food when I went out. And this was like, 2014 or 2015. I was like, I'll post.
I miss those days of Instagram. You're just posting whatever comes
Yeah,
to
I was
mind.
just like, and then the filters on Instagram, you just swipe and pick one and
Sepia,
stuff.
black and white. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah. I remember those
So
days.
I was like, I'll post on it. And I'm like, just give me free food for the month, like $200 gift card.
Love. Yeah.
And he was like super hyped about that. And then it just started. It was like, he gave me a $200 gift card, and he gave me $200 cash. And then it was like,
Sick.
at that point, I was like, I just made $200 just sitting here and just pitching him a small thing, like a service. And then how that kind of grew to Mr. Social Eats was, back then, like, food bloggers were not as big as what they are now. Like anyone who has an iPhone now is a food blogger. But at that point, I was like, yo, I'm going to build an account that, because I started picking up other restaurant clients like in the same area, because like they're all like small businesses. They would talk to each other about it. So I think I had like 5 restaurant clients at that point, and I was like, okay, I want to, like, yes, we're promoting them on their platforms, but I want to build another hub where I can just promote all of them in one thing. So it was like a Brampton food blog. Just you go there, you get to see all these different restaurants. So I had started something, I can't even remember what it was. I think it was called like Social Brampton or something like that. I started that, and then from there, it wasn't taking off as much as I thought it would. It was like super slow grind, and I then started learning about personal branding, building audience, like connections, trust, all that. It's easier with the face, stuff like that. So I had taken that account and I switched it over from Social Brampton to Mr. Social Eats, and then I was just like the face in front of it, just pushing it, building connections with people, doing different stuff, and it kind of just picked up from there. So I grew, like, this is like 2015 or something like that. I grew it to like 10,000 followers in a year, which is
big, a lot.
Which is a lot at that time.
Yeah.
So,
well, even now, I would say that's quite significant.
Yeah, for sure. Back then, it was like 10,000 followers in a year was
unheard
like
of.
Exactly. So, and then I used that platform to be like, look, I can do it myself. I can do it for your business. And it just kept going from there. So.
Yeah. And were you doing any did you have like an online blog as well when you were building this out? Or was this just through Instagram?
No, it was just through Instagram, because my writing probably wasn't my strongest suit. So I was like, listen, I can take photos. And videos didn't even exist at that time. So it was like, I can take photos. Cool.
Yeah.
Like,
so it kind of just happened naturally.
Exactly.
And then for those that know you, obviously know that your partner, Ange, you guys do so much together. You work together, you live together. You're like so in simpatico with your lifestyle and what you guys do for each other. And Ange also has, I just want to touch on this bit too. I'd love to have her on eventually and talk about this more herself. But I know you were a big part in helping her build the brand to where it is today. But she also has an online brand through Instagram, Champagne Ange, where she makes drinks recipes and seasonal recipes and things of that sorts. And she's grown it from, can you talk a little bit about the growth behind that? I think it was what, 100K to like, she's at like 309 or something?
That was, so it started by, she actually created, her account was essentially Miss Social Eats first. And she was like, it was basically the healthier version of Mr. Social Eats. And that's where it started. And then at one point she was like, oh, I want to just try something different. And she still had the name, but then she was doing like DIY and she was doing random things.
Right.
Just anything, basically just documenting our life. Cause we were just like, listen, let's not try things that we don't normally do. Like just do what you do.
Things that were fun, enjoyable,
and just
right?
things that happen even if we weren't planning to make that happen. So she was just filming stuff. And then one day, I think this was during COVID where obviously restaurants and stuff were closed down. And she was like, yeah, I'm just craving a mojito. Like want to try one. And she was making it. And I was like, why don't we just film this? And she filmed a video and it hit like 100,000 views first video.
Wow.
Like when first video making cocktails, not all the other stuff. Cause she was like, I think she was running the account for like 2 or 3 years before her first viral video.
Right. Yeah.
And
there's a lot of pivoting in the process.
Yeah. So then I was like, okay, this works. Like some obviously 100K views were like, this works. And this was like 2020. So we were like, I was like, post for 30 days, like just do recipes, whatever we eat in a daily basis, drink on daily, just record it. Let's post it 30 days. And I think 30 days it went up to like 20,000 followers. Then 60 days was at 50K. Then I think 100 days later it was at 100K.
The growth was crazy. I remember we're all like watching behind the scenes, like holy, because we were also along for that process of like knowing Ange and like where she started with the account. And then I remember just seeing her growth and I was like, this is so sick. Like seeing her like from where she was to where she is now. Yeah.
So we went, it was like 100K. And then in December, we did 100,000 in a month.
The Christmas recipes really.
Yeah. We just were, and again, all this stuff was like strategically planned. So it wasn't like, what am I going to post today? Like we mapped out like the seasons. We're like, hey, listen, this season, Christmas recipes are huge trending, but like, how do we break that down? Like, let's do like shareables, drinks, let's do all these different things. And we just kind of mapped it out and then she just went and executed
Interesting.
it.
So did you know exactly what recipes or like drink recipes that you guys were posting like months in advance, or is how like early on do you plan stuff like that?
Yeah, we at that point we were just planning it a month at a time. So we were like, hey, December is next week. Like, what are we doing? So
which is what we did with our clients too. Like
so we were planning it a month in advance, and we were like, hey, cool, like we know it's Christmas, holidays. This is the stuff we should do. Yeah. And I think we're at a point now where we plan like by quarters. Like we kind of know the year calendar, but it's like, okay, this is the fall season or this is summer season. So cool. We're only going to do this, and kind of run that. So
how do you navigate that when, for example, brand deals come in? Like when you might have had something planned and like keeping it in accordance with the calendar.
Yeah. We pitch brands according to the season. So we will be like, hey, it's summer season. We're doing a bunch of like batch cocktails. So does anyone want to jump into that theme? And then brands will kind of reach out and be like, yep, I'm in.
Nice. Yeah. So would you say that that's like a common approach that you guys have gone, is like reaching out first to the brands? Because I think this is an important lesson here. A lot of people expect just like what they want to come to them. Oh, like my dream person will come when they come. Oh, like my dream job will get here when I get here. Like, and just aren't taking the steps to make it happen, and like aren't doing what they can to like really accelerate that. Like, have you noticed that has been really beneficial when it comes to the brands that you guys have been able to work with?
Yeah, we did that. So that started with Mr. Social Eats, because at one point I was like, when I had those first 5 clients, they were all word of mouth, and that was it. And then from there, I was like, I'm like, how do we how do we accelerate this? What can we do to
expedite it?
Yeah. And that's when we started like an outreach strategy where we're like, hey, how do we, whether it's calling people, DMing them, emailing them, like let's just ramp that up. So now our process, like obviously it's evolved over time, but we basically, one of our ways to acquire clients is just an outreach strategy. So we are sending DMs, emails, pitching campaigns, and then it's just a frequency game. So it's just the more you do, the better odds of like to give you an idea, we probably pitch maybe like 400 brands a month.
Wow.
So at that point, even 10% of that are interested is like 40 brands. Out of those 40, maybe 10 fall through. But again, that's a huge 10 new clients that we've never had.
Yeah. And I think that's like applicable to people too, even if they don't have like a brand, like a personal brand yet of what they have. Like even when it comes to like reaching out to employers for jobs, like that's also a really good strategy too, right? Do you tailor each message to that specific brand, or how do you go about personalizing that each time?
Yeah, we were, but because we're doing such high volume, like we now build more of a like general message, but that still applies to everyone. So we send that. Once there's interest is when we kind of go in and do that more custom approach.
I love it. That's awesome. Progress over perfection.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of this quote. I know you are as well. Can you talk to me a little bit about this?
Yeah.
What that
Yeah. When I
means to
heard
you?
you say that, that was like the highlight. That was like the most exciting moment. I was like, love this line.
Your biggest takeaway?
Yeah. Because I think perfection is, I think people that tell me, we do a ton of interviews and we're always interviewing people, whether it's at work or our business.
Yeah.
And when someone says like, yeah, I'm a perfectionist, I was like, cool, you like to waste time. So like that's my takeaway from that. I'm like, you're a perfectionist, you like to waste time and you procrastinate because
I love that outlook, honestly.
Yeah.
Takes the pressure off.
Because I look at it like perfectionists just make excuses to not do what they need to do.
A forever student.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So our whole you said it today too, where you were just like just start and pivot when you need to, and kind of, so our whole thing is just like let's start it, let's try it out, optimize, keep going, make those small adjustments and just keep pushing. So it's like, hey, like, and this is that whole thing what I post about, right, is like here's the progress of what I've done, right? Not just here's me running a 5K in under 30, but here's me from day one where it took me an hour to do it and then 45 minutes and 40 and so on. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think like when it comes to like wanting to put yourself out there, it's so easy to just make an excuse as to like, oh, like it won't get done. But I think in anything in life, like just putting it out there and knowing that like your first variation of anything is not going to be your best work, and like just accepting that and taking it as a learning lesson rather than letting it defeat you. Like just knowing that like there's more to come, and that, you know, exactly what we're saying, progress over
accepting
perfection.
Failure.
Yeah, embracing failure for sure. I think that's my biggest lesson that I've learned even in just like my job is like, you're gonna fail. Like you're not gonna get it right every single time. But this is another point that I wanted to touch on. I think people think that, and you know, this isn't a hot take, like this is very much like exaggerated over and over again, but that progress is linear. Like you doing your roadie to the 5K, like you might think, okay, my time was 16 minutes last week, so I need to do it in 15. But if you go out there and your time is like 16:50 or 16:30 and not 15 or lower, then you might think, damn, like I'm a failure. Like why keep going? I'm moving backwards. And it's just like, people don't realize it's like, okay, you may like, there's so many contributing factors to that one. Like, what was your mindset like that day? What did you eat that day? Did you get any previous exercise? Like, what was work like? What was on your mind? Like, so much can contribute to that one piece of like what you're doing that like, and I think people don't always take that into consideration, aren't mindful about that, of like those little micro pieces of your day that can like lead back into what your performance looked like that day. Can you talk a little bit about like those key areas of your life and like why you think, you know, if you're not optimal, for example, with your business, why that might then affect your relationship or like your health or et cetera?
Human optimizations. This is the new stuff that I'm doing. So
let's talk about it.
Yeah, I think we're doing pretty well with like the business. Some stuff that I've noticed is like, hey, like if I'm doing this now and I feel like I'm not in the best shape or best like health, imagine if I was. Yeah. Right. So then we start now, like I got this Whoop bracelet, and this Whoop bracelet tracks a bunch of different stuff, your sleep, your strain on your body, your recovery, all these different things. Yeah. And then we start to we're just way more like, we live life with more like intent, and we're just like, we're intentional about literally everything now. So it's like, what time we go to sleep, what did we eat, what's the last thing we did before we went to bed, things like that, just to see like, wow, I woke up better. So because I went to sleep earlier, or because I ate something a little more healthier yesterday, I woke up feeling better today. So we started just tracking stuff. We started being more intentional about how we live our lives. And I think all those small tweaks have just helped us keep going and push through everything.
I've heard someone say too, when it comes to like working on different areas of your life, like you might meet someone, for example, and let's say they have a 6-figure business and they seem on the outside very successful, but their health is just completely out of order. It's like, I heard someone say, like, I wouldn't take advice from that person that, like, sure, it might look like they have it all figured out because, like, they have all this money or, like, success, but, like, that means, like, the relationship might be taking a toll, their health might be taking a toll, like, something's got to give. Mm-hmm. How do you, because I know that, like, along with building such a successful business and brand, that you've also been with Ange for, I think, how long? You guys just celebrated your 6-year anniversary. So, obviously, like, and I feel like a lot of what I see from what I've learned from your podcast with Ange, a lot of the same tactics that you have applied to your business, you've also almost applied to your relationship. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you think that having that mindset translates not only from a business perspective, but also when it comes to building relationships?
Yeah. Yeah, I think this most people are going to hate that I say this, but we do treat our relationship like a business.
Yeah.
And not saying that there's no like affection or like intimacy there, but it's like we look at it like, hey, like let's go year by year and let's just make the most out of this. So one thing we value a lot is just open communication. So if I'm upset about something, like Ange knows, she will know within the day. Or if I say like, sometimes I'll be like, hey, whenever you're ready to talk about this, like I need to speak to you about X, Y, Z, whatever it is. So open communication is something that's such a transferable thing between business and our relationship. It's just communicating with your team, clients, all that.
Yeah.
Same thing, communicating with your partner. So I think that's the biggest one.
And is that something you felt like you innately knew to do right away, or did that take time for you to like recognize the importance of that as you moved throughout your relationship with her?
I think we obviously realize that communication in business is super important. So we're like, hey, if our relationship is in some sense a business where we're just growing and building together, then if communication works in our business, shouldn't that be a big factor or pillar in our relationship as well? So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And do you guys have times where, because I've heard on different podcasts from different people that work with their spouse, that they'll have like dedicated time to sit down, whether it's once a week. Jay Shetty says he does this with his wife, like once a quarter, or just whenever they notice, 6 months, whatever they notice that like there might be a significant need for a check-in. Do you have those set times, or is it just like whenever you feel that there might be something to talk about?
Check-ins for what exactly?
On your personal side, like when it comes to like the relationship.
We time block a lot of our stuff. So like this is that and I'll chat a little bit about time management later, but we time block a lot of stuff. So we'll be like, hey, from this time to this time we do this, from this time to that time we do this, and then we'll always have like date night in there, or hey, let's go touch base on our goals. Let's actually talk about, we need to discuss the house or the mortgage or whatever it is. Like we'll actually time block times like that. And then what we'll do now is like, whether it's every 2 weeks or a month, we'll kind of look back at the month and be like, okay, did we actually spend enough time hanging out with each other? Like how many hours did I spend this month just doing something with you versus like working or playing poker, or all these different things that I do. So we're just super organized in that sense. And then it kind of gives us an insight on like where we're spending our time. Kind of thing.
I like it. It's strategic. And I think to what you're saying, like a lot of people might look at that and be like, what? Like that seems like so unorganized, or seems so not unorganized, unorthodox. Mm-hmm. But if you think about it, it's like, if you're not on the same page with your partner, like let's say for example with Champagne Ange, like she might see that brand and say, you know what, like this is something I just want to do on the side for the rest of my life. Whereas like you might look at it and like as you guys build that together, you might say, oh, well, I thought we were going to make this like a multi-billion-dollar franchise one day. Like if you're not even on the same page about those things, then how do you expect to like go far? And I think that can get lost a lot, right? It's like people don't think to check in, but it's like, how do you plan for the future if you don't have the same objectives in mind, right?
Yeah. Two sides to this. One is the business side is one of the coach that I'm currently working with, shout out Nick Regina, he has told me to build a business plan. So
for your relationship,
well, I'll get to the relationship side too.
Yeah.
But the business plan is for the business. Like a lot of people, like just think about even like we'll use your candle business. Like
Yeah.
you're kind of like you work you do stuff in the seasons and all that. But it's like, what is the 5-year goal? Like, do you know what you're trying to hit in 5 years, and how are you going to like reverse engineer that back? Most people don't think about that, or if they do, it's just a thought in their head, or
they don't put it on paper.
So we're currently working on a business plan to literally like map out everything we're trying to do in the business. Who's our next hire? How are we going to scale this? What services are we going to offer in the next year, 2 years, things like that. So like I said, because we look at our relationship too as like a business where we're building, it's like, okay, if we have a business plan for our business, what's that plan for our relationship? Right. And that's where we kind of put in like, cool, like we want to travel, or we want to buy investment properties, and we'll kind of map out our life kind of thing. Yeah.
Sorry. I know this wasn't exactly on the docket, but I just love talking to you about this stuff. I have one more question on that. So, because I can imagine, I know who you are. Like, I know you've always had this like entrepreneurial mindset, and like, this is just so innate to who you are. At first, when it came to like you guys getting together, was this at all jarring to her, being like, oh, like you're supposed to be my boyfriend. You're supposed to like love me and just we're supposed to have fun. You're not supposed to treat me like a business partner. Was that ever conflict? Like, because I just imagine someone, like I imagine if my boyfriend came and like talked to me about that, like I could potentially be a little thrown off at first of like, oh, like, are we not, like, is this how you look at it? Like, do you not see me more as that like loving partner? Do you see me more as like that business partner? Was that ever something that, took some more understanding to come to that conclusion? Or was it like, did she understand right away? Like, I'd love to like have some insight on that.
I'm super transparent. So I believe
you're blunt.
I'm super,
you say it how it is.
I'm super blunt. And I just think you speak the truth, just talk the truth all the time. Right. Like I rather not have to lie or say things to sugarcoat stuff. I'm like, if I feel like this is how I feel, and how you respond is your decision. Right?
Yeah, so, exactly. It's on you.
When we started dating, we also were friends for like 2 years before that. So she kind of had an idea of like how I operated. Yeah. And I just told her like from the beginning, I was like, listen, like my number one goal is this. So it's like, the relationship's always going to take a second seat, because it's like, hey, listen, like, and at that point I was so money driven. I was like, my number one goal is I'm trying to make $1 million. Like, that's what I need to do. So relationship is always going to be number two, because I'm like, most relationships or marriages break because of financials.
I know, which is terrifying.
And I kind of knew that from younger. So I was like, if most relationships break up because of financials, then I'm going to focus on making money, because then that's going to help us with our relationship. Right.
Like, so in the end, it will overturn.
Exactly. Yeah. Over time, I realized that's definitely not the best approach, because now it's obviously I value the relationship over money. But I think
it's like, what point is the money if you don't have people and you don't have a life that you love to share with? I think that's a big lesson too.
But I was so focused on that. So I kind of told her from the beginning, I'm like, listen, this is what I want to do.
Too, right? It's like, we're also focused on that when we're young.
So I told her, I'm like, this is what I want to do. This is my plan. Like, are you on board? Yeah. Or is this like where we kind of ended? So she was like, and she also has entrepreneurial parents. So right. She was like, this is literally what my parents do.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. I feel like if you come from a similar background, it's like, I've heard that somewhere too, where it's like people's background. I was reading this in The Psychology of Money, and there was a quote about this that said like, people are more likely to be friends with people, partners with people based off of what their finances looked like and like how they grew up, based on like anything else. Like, or like that's one of the most significant driving factors of like why you like get with someone or partner, or like why you would like more likely partner up with someone is because of those factors. Yeah, because
you share same interest traits, things like that.
Yeah,
right?
and just mindset. But I think also too, something important to note about that is as you get older, it can be really hard to form your own opinion on things that just throughout your life you've been told like that's just the way that you should think about things. Like, oh, when it comes to, and I'm trying to find the best example here, not to butcher this too much, but
save your money.
Yeah, when it comes, or you could say like, oh, like let's say your parents had an experience, like this isn't my experience, but I'm just using this as like an example because I've heard it's quite common of like, oh, your parents have taught you that those who have money growing up are selfish and they only spend it on themselves. And it means they're greedy. And so that's just like the mindset that you had growing up, and you won't even challenge it because that's just what you've been taught. Whereas like, but you really need to take some self accountability and take a step back and say like, okay, these were the beliefs that were put on me, but this doesn't mean that that has to be my belief system. Like I can expand out of what I have known to be true and like explore that on my own. And like that might mean, okay, like that's just what your parents have told you, but then you read books and you realize it's like the more wealth that you have, the more good you have to do with the world, the better opportunity you have for a richer life for yourself, for your future children, for the homes that you buy, for the charities that you give to. Like it really, and like this is why I'm so passionate about this topic, it really is all about how you look at it. And it's like you can choose to have that as a limiting factor in your life, or you could choose it as a tool to help build to where you want to go. So I just think that's always something that stuck out to me as well.
Yeah, it's societal norms, right? We're so used to, hey, like I think I always use this this example is like our parents are always like, you know, that American dream where it's like
9 to 5.
Get a good job, find a girlfriend, get engaged, buy a house,
and
have
that's
kids,
your life.
that's it. And then my parents, immigrant parents, and obviously biggest immigrant goal is like their kids do better than them.
Yeah.
So how I looked at it, my perspective shifted when I kind of realized this was I'm like, if my parents brought me to this country to do better, why am I doing what they're telling me to do?
Yeah.
Because if you're telling me to do something, I'm going to do it how you've done it.
Yeah.
So I think at that point I was like, listen, if this is what they've done in their life and this is where they're at and they want me to be better than them, then I need to take a step and create my own path and do a little bit outside of those norms.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like if you're told exactly how to do something, when to do it, you're only going to become resentful. And I think that's true in relationships, friendships, like so many like parent relationships. I feel like a lot of things can break when you don't put up those boundaries and you don't like set those own rules for yourself. But it's like, that's why it's important to like navigate that on your own. Like no one can tell you how to think or feel or do. You have to decide that on your own, which can be tough, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really important. Shifting gears here back to the personal branding side. For anyone contemplating building a personal brand, can you speak on a little bit about why you believe it's so important to being successful? Because I know this is a huge piece of your narrative.
Yeah. I think personal brands is like your resume, right? So if you want, and even the job that I like, how we met was through Candy Box, and how I got that job was through my personal brand. Like I don't even think I gave them a resume. So
wow, really?
Yeah, because so I knew Mafuz from before, and then I also knew Daryl from before, and they just knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
In this space, and it was just me doing that, them understanding what I do, and from there it kind of just developed obviously into what it is now. But the personal brand, just I think people that don't, everyone has a personal brand. It's just about marketing it online and putting that image online. So I think benefits personal brand is just opportunities. It is to you're essentially just building, you're telling people what you do. And I think opportunities is the biggest. Opportunity is probably the biggest part. It's just like, hey, you're positioning yourself to the world of this is what I do and this is how I do it. And then the other stuff is like community, just building stuff because of your brand. So
yeah, I always think about this is like literally the difference between you and someone that we may know that like also has a similar mindset as you is that you actually just like went out and did it. Like you actually put the stuff online, you started the business. It's like so many people have that potential, but until you actually take action on it and own it, like that's when obviously you're going to start seeing the dividends pay off. And it's the same, something I always think about too that's so crazy is like, so for example, I have a very similar background with Candy Box. Like I basically got in because they saw what I was doing with the candle brand and they were like, oh, this is a good fit because I see you're already doing this on your own time. So we would imagine you'd be a good fit for this company. But it's like, and eventually in following that path that you know is meant for you and like being authentic in your personal brand and sharing it with people, it leads you to where you want to be. And how it, like a common example I'll think about is like, oh, like think of like an actor, right? Like think of Blake Lively, for example. I just saw It Ends With Us, so it's like on my mind. Like if she never set out, and I think, again, this leads back to the lesson of like, just be yourself and follow what's meant for you. And like everything that's meant to come to you will come to you is like, like she knew, for example, she wanted to be an actress. So she's like started and led towards that path of like acting, like doing gigs, like going to auditions. And that eventually led her to becoming Serena Vanderwoodson on Gossip Girl. That led her to her husband, Ryan Reynolds. Like that's where she met him. And like, that's just like the life that she was able to build because she followed that path. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like imagine if she was just like, no, like I'm not set to do this. Like it's not meant for me. Like it's literally just all about how you think about it. So I just think that's
how you
like
position yourself online.
Yeah.
One interesting thing that I just came across, and I know you'll find this interesting, is building personal brands is, and you see the rise of influencers, creators, and why they're like blowing up online is because they know how to build audience and they are sharing like personal things in their life. Because if I asked you, what's a top influencer that you like to follow?
Lauren Bostick.
Okay, so if I was to ask you about Lauren and ask you like, I don't know, what's her favorite candy or whatever, there's odds that you would probably know some of that stuff.
Oh yeah,
she talks
she's
about
the
it.
queen of personal branding. Oh yeah,
Right? But then we look at celebrities, like let's use Blake Lively. Like besides her character she plays, how much do you really know about her?
Not much.
Exactly.
Nothing.
So rise of influencers, rise of creators that tap into their personal brands and share that stuff online is like they're going to be bigger than celebrities one day.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about, like what the future of that will look like. That's crazy. What's your goal in life? Like if I were to ask you how you want to be remembered, what would you say?
Yeah, fresh answer, because I've just recently chatted about this, is I think once upon a time my goal used to be, hey, I want to be happy. Like I just want to be happy.
What does happiness mean to you?
Yeah, and that's the next part. It was like, what does happiness mean? Because I'm like, 5 years ago, I told myself if I was at where I'm at now, I'm going to be the happiest ever. And now I'm here and I'm like, oh, once I have this, I'm going to be the happiest ever. So just like money, I thought, hey, once upon a time I was chasing money and I was like, you can always get richer. So it's like when I hit a certain amount, it's like, I want to make more.
Yeah.
And then same thing with happiness, right? Like if you're constantly chasing happiness, are you ever happy?
Yeah.
And this is why I talk so much about enjoying the moment, enjoying the process. Why we pop those champagne bottles is just celebrating moments. But I think once upon a time, I guess the goal was always to be happy. I think now it's to be useful. So now I'm so focused. And I heard this whole discussion, Alex Hormozy kind of talked about being useful versus being happy. And it's changed my perspective on so much, because I'm like, I'd rather be useful to people than happy or trying to figure out what happiness means to myself. So whether that means, hey, I'm useful to my family and friends in whatever situation, hey, like whether it's financially, whether it's just support, whether it's helping them move a couch or having conversations here where you leave today and you just feel inspired to do 10 new things or whatever it is. So I think my whole thing is just like, how do I light people around me, share that fire and kind of help people live better lives?
I love that. That's a really interesting perspective and way to look at it. Do you know who Tinks is, the influencer? She's like dating, like she talks about lifestyle, like food. Okay. Anyway, she had a podcast episode that touched on something similar, and it was titled "Why We Need to Be Interesting." And it basically just talks about what you just talked about in the sense of like why it's important to have your own hobbies, your own interests, your own ideas, like your own perspectives. Because when it comes to like the people in your life and like building community, building relationships, like that is what's going to like cause you to attract the people that you want to attract, is like being keen on what you're hoping to explore and your interests and things of that sort. So I think that definitely relates back to what you're saying, right? Of like being useful, knowing that like you have purpose, you have drive, like, and people in your life are going to benefit from that as a whole. You're someone who does not seem afraid of risk at all. You're someone who is a gambler. I see you gambling all the time online. Have you always been this way? Like, have you always had a no fear mentality when it comes to risk?
Let me put something to bed though. I don't gamble all the time. I gamble. I like to play poker. I like to go to casinos and stuff like that. So
we'll like text you on a Friday night, being like,
so
Kiefer, let's go for drinks, and you're like, got poker tonight.
Yeah. So to everyone that knows, Fridays I don't do anything but play poker, casino. So,
Noted.
and you know, so if anyone invites me out Friday, I'm like, sorry, I can't do it, even if it's 1 year from now. So
Yeah. Okay. Noted.
yeah, I think I think the risk part, do I take the craziest risks? No, I think we're super strategic, we're calculated when we take risks. So yes, it looks like we take a bunch of crazy risks, but everything we do is calculated. So I wouldn't say I wouldn't say I take the biggest risk. I say I take the most, we take the most risk because everything, like I said, we track things. We're like, hey, if we do this, what's the worst situation that could happen? If we do this, what's the best situation? And it's kind of like the positive outweighs the negative here. Let's run with it kind of thing. Yeah. So I think how strategic I like to position myself, how me in the gambling side was like that risk taker. Yeah. I'm like, I've taken that and applied that to business, in our relationship, in different aspects of my life. And it kind of just helped me propel even faster ahead because I'm not afraid to make a mistake, or I'm not afraid to fail. And
do you find like the more you take the more risks you take, the more success you see from what you might have accomplished, it like pushes you, right?
So I saw a stat of athletes, and it showed the greatest athletes of the world. And I don't know the exact numbers, but it was like, it showed like Michael Jordan, Messi, and all these different, like the greatest athletes. And they showed things like the number of shots Michael Jordan shot versus got in, like scored. Yeah. And their percents were like 20% success rates and 10%. I think Messi's was like 15% shots on target versus goals. His thing was like 15% or something ridiculously.
Wild. But it comes back to that point of like, the difference is they're trying. They're like continuing it, right?
Exactly. So that's the whole idea, is taking risk. Is like, okay, if the greatest in the world their conversion rate is 15%, then what am I doing? Why am I taking 1 year to make one move? I'm like, let's do 10 moves in a week.
Do you ever get overwhelmed? Because to me, from the outside looking in, you're a team lead at work. Mm-hmm. You basically have another full-time job outside of your 9 to 5. Like, but you never seem like you get anxious, overwhelmed, or driven with anxiety. Or is this just something that you're good at hiding?
No, I don't think I get overwhelmed. I think one thing is, I wouldn't say, I'm trying to think, like, do I get overwhelmed? Define to me, tell me, what do you mean by overwhelmed?
Do you ever feel like the weight of what you're doing weighs so heavy on your mind that you're unable to perform optimally? Because you're just stressed about outcomes, future. Yeah. Basically thinking ahead of where we're at in the present moment. And
I think we map things out, right? This is kind of going back to that plan, those ideas. So it's like our whole thing is, and this is where the Friday nights, I'm like, listen, if it doesn't have to do with something specific, I don't want to do it. And that's like our whole life. So it's like, hey, if someone's like, yo, you want to go on a vacation, and it's like, that doesn't really feed into what we're trying to do, then we don't want to do it. So do I get overwhelmed? No, I think we plan things out pretty well. So like you mentioned, like the day job that I have, like, hey, I know I have to work that like 8 to 6. Like I blocked that out for that. But then I'm like, from 6 to 7, we do this, 7 to 8, we do this. So I kind of just map things out. But then also just the flexibility of being able to pivot if I need to. So like, there's some days where I wake up and I'm like, I don't feel like working. So we'll kind of there's everyone has those days where just off days. So it's like, I think I'm okay with the fact of, hey, I'm going to go super hard and then listen to my body. When I need a break, But until then, like, I don't, like, a lot of people, again, societal norms is work super hard during the week, enjoy your weekends, relax, all that stuff. So for us, it's like, why am I working 5 days a week to rest and relax for 2 days and just repeat that cycle? Imagine if I just did 25 days in a row. Yeah. Think about the trajectory of how much farther I go versus going for 5 days and then pausing and then going for 5 days and pausing. Whereas I can just run with it. And then, hey, let me take a week off because I hit my goal or whatever it is.
Right. So, do you feel like you ever experience burnout being so on the go as you are?
Yeah. No, I have. Like, I think so many people, mentors, people in my life have always said, like, watch out for burnout. Yeah. I don't think I've ever experienced burnout. I think, like, and it's crazy because it's like, yo, we do a lot of stuff. So it's like,
That's always the first thing I think of when I look at what you guys are doing. I'm like, how did they just not stop?
Yeah. I don't think, we don't experience burnout. I don't even know what burnout really, like I have an idea of burnout, but it's like, have we experienced it? I don't think so. So,
well, I think like you bring up a really important point though. And I've heard this in a lot of books is like, if you plan so accordingly to what you hope to accomplish in the future, there's no longer anxiety about how you're going to get there, the path, what that looks like. It's because you've dialed in, like, you know what your next step is. And so as a result, you're not going to like push, like you're not going to step outside of that boundary that you've created yourself, that path.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the burnout is not a thing because I'm like, we're just so focused. We just know what we need to do.
Yeah.
So,
I love it. Yep. I love it. How can finding the right coach benefit your life?
This one, yeah. So I told you right now I got a coach. His name is Nick Regina. He is owner of Spark Financial Group, or co-founder. And I've only been working with him for like a month-ish and a little bit over a month, I think. And just the way that, like, the stuff that he knows is like crazy. He's doing personal development courses with like Patrick Bet-David and all these big names. So it's like, just for me to learn that stuff. And I think this is every solopreneur, everyone that's in the space is like, they think they just have to do it themselves. Right. Yeah. So, and then you've had a personal coach for like, or a fitness coach. Yeah. And you've seen like how they've taken you from where you're at to where you wanted to go. So it's like, that's one aspect of your life. Like, now imagine doing that with a relationship coach, a holistic coach, a life coach, and just getting all these different things in. So I think one thing I've now realized is that, hey, I don't know everything. Like, I know what I know and that's it. And for me to spend time learning something new, I rather just pay someone who's an expert in that to now help me get to that goal, get to that point where I want to get faster. So coaching, like, again, how do you do the value? I'm struggling right now. There's a coaching program that I want to take. It's like a 12-week program. It's about like 10,000 USD. Yeah. And it's like, whoa. I know, which is crazy, right? You think about that. I haven't spent the money yet, and I want to. But then I guess the question comes down to like, what's the ROI in that? Like, how am I gonna? I'm spending 10,000, or it's USD, so like $15,000. Like, how am I going to make this money back? So again, goes back to those setting targets, setting goals. When you got a personal trainer for your fitness life, like you were like, hey, I want to drop 10 pounds, or I want to get to this body fat percentage. So you set a goal. So at the end of it, when you hit your goal, that investment was worth it, no matter what the number was, because whatever the number was, it didn't matter because you hit your goal. So
for sure.
When you're talking about getting coaches and figuring out, like, is it worth it? Like, if you set a goal and you hit it at the end of that session, I think it's worth it. So,
if someone wants to find a coach to work with, whether it's relationship, finances, business, whatever, where would they go about finding someone? What was your approach?
There's multiple ways. There's like the interesting thing with coaches is not every coach is meant for everyone. So
it's like a therapist.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So you kind of have to find someone you vibe with. So stuff like how I would do it is like, number one, I would ask people. So I'd be like, hey guys, I'm looking for a life coach. Can you recommend anyone? People will send me different recos. Yeah. Then I'll do my own research and look up some people. My next step then is just, I'll follow all of them and consume their content. And then from there, I kind of just resonate with one or two people. Yeah. And that's when I reach out and I'm like, hey, I love what you say online about XYZ. I'm interested in your service. And I just kind of get to understand what they do a little bit better and kind of decide from there.
Yeah. I love that. What would you say is your definition of success?
Yeah, I break it down to 4 pillars. So when I think of success, I think of wealth. So this is like, hey, making money, assets, things like that. Like, we obviously set different goals for that. So it's like in our wealth pillar, it's like, hey, we want to have this amount of money, revenue, properties, just cash flowing assets, things like that. That's one out of the 4. The second one is health. So, hey, am I in the best shape? Am I ready to be a dad? Am I ready to run a marathon? Like, am I optimally perform? Like, that human optimization again. Like, am I ready to do whatever I need to, physically ready? So I think that's a huge thing, and we've kind of set targets and goals there. I think relationships are huge. So it's like the people, not just like with me and Ange, but it's like the obviously relationship with your significant other, huge, big, like it's probably the most important. But then the relationships I have with my family and the relationships I have with my friends, with my coworkers, with my team. So that's a big part of my pillar of like success, what I think success is. And then the last one is love. Right. So it's just again, it's just that intimate part of your life too. So, so it's health, wealth, love, and then relationships. So
I love that.
Yeah. So I kind of build that. Okay. What does success look like if I hit all the things I need in all those different places? And that's what success means to me.
I love that. I'm going to steal that from you. That's really good stuff. How important is it to surround yourself with the right people?
That's like I think that's my biggest learning in the last, like, I think throughout this whole entrepreneurial
Mine
journey.
too.
Yeah. So you kind of know, but for people that still struggling with this, I think just like-minded people say this all the time now. It's like, oh, I want to be around like-minded individuals, and it just changes the way you look at things. I recently joined Harbor 20. It's a wellness center in Vaughan, and it's all about human optimization. There's red light therapy, sauna, cold plunge, all those super cool facility. And when I went there, membership's not cheap. So it's like, first it's like, damn, I got to spend this monthly money. But then I was like, okay, what am I going to get out of this? Like, okay, I'm going to be physically better. Mentally, I'm going to be there, or even improve mentally. But one thing that I didn't even think about, and now just today, I met some people there that one guy owns a yoga studio. One guy owns a construction business, and we just sat in the sauna and they were telling me about different things.
It's a networking opportunity, literally.
So just being around those people is like, hey, I think we hold on to our friendships from like high school, college, all that stuff. Where again, I think it's super important to have that, because that's your pillars. Those are the people that you grew up with. You have such great experiences with. But then if you look at the people that like feed and nourish your soul, it's like, yes, they do a certain part, but then there's that second part where it's like, hey, when you get to hang out with guys like Mafuz or Daryl, or you know those that group of people, it's like they just feed your soul differently. You leave a conversation just feeling uplifted.
You're inspired. I've also heard this quote too that says, if you're the smartest person in the room, find another room. So like make sure that you're constantly surrounded by people who can teach you something.
And there's three parts to it. So there's the mentorship component. So it's like, hey, find people that can mentor you, find people that are doing what you're doing, and then find people that you can mentor. And if you have a good balance of all three, that's where it's like, that's going to excel you just to levels that you can't even think of. So
I love that.
The networking, just having the right people, like I kind of said, like those certain people that I just mentioned, when you're around them, you feel good. So it's like, imagine having that all the time. Just different people in your circle that just anyone you talk to, it's like constantly just development. And again, we don't have to go into the business side, but it's just development in life. So it's like the physical side, the spiritual side, the mental side, just relationships, all that.
And I think too, like I think a reminder that like it does take time. Like, and for those people that might be struggling, like to the audience members that might be struggling with like finding their people, finding people that they feel inspired by and connect with, like it can take time. But I think something to remember there too is like what we were speaking on earlier is just like follow what's meant for you and what you're passionate about. If you love going to yoga, sign up for like a yoga class membership. If you love piano, go to try a few piano lessons and see who you meet there. If you feel really compelled to start, I don't know what an example is here, going to like the hot and cold place that you mentioned, the wellness, like a wellness studio. If that's something that you want to get into, if you
run clubs,
I know are huge now. The new dating apps in 2024. And like, you'll just naturally find your people. Like that's where they're, and I can't emphasize that enough too, of like Candy Box, like me starting North Aroma and then coming into Candy Box and finding so many like people that I'm just like constantly like inspired by. I'm like, we're very lucky to be in the spot that we are and work, because I feel like so many people work for corporations where it doesn't have that sense of camaraderie and like togetherness, and it's like we're very lucky to be in an environment where we're like surrounded by so many people like that. So
one
awesome.
actionable step, just so people are, because I think finding communities or finding that network, that community, those people around you, super hard stuff. So I think if you're struggling still, biggest advice here is like find one person and just do stuff with them. So it's that accountability partner, but it's like find that one person. Whether it's like, hey, listen, every week we're gonna go for a run club, and then the next week your goal is, let's just pretend. I'll use you as an example. Like me and you start to go to a run club, or we run together. Like we're not even a club, just me and you run together. Yeah. The next week the challenge is, you got to invite one more friend. I'll invite one more friend. So then week 2 we're now 4 people running. Then week 3, all 4 people have to bring another person. So week 3, we're 8 people running. That's how you just build your network. And people will jump in, people will drop off, but you want to build a network from one person. Just find one person and just keep doubling it.
It's like building a team at work. It's like people are going to come and go, but the ones that are like there and meant to stay will stay. I love that. That's really good advice. Okay. Wrapping this up here. Last and final question. What is your favorite quote?
Oh, my favorite quote. Again, something I think I've mentioned Nick Regina a couple of times now, but Nick Regina, shout out to you for changing the way I look at things in life. He tells me one of the biggest things I struggle with is, like I said, we do so many things. And I told you in the beginning, I was like, listen, I don't want to be that guy in the boat showing people I'm here, enjoying my life, or taking first class flights. Like I want to have people with me doing it. Yeah. And so one of the biggest things I felt, or I feel with the people around me, is that I always try to drag people along. Yeah. And something I'm starting to realize is like, hey, people might not be ready to come along, and you kind of have to give them that space. So the quote that I'm really focused on right now, like hyper driving, is just like lead by example. So love the idea here is like, hey, listen, like people, if you lead by example, people will follow along. So I'll give you so many different, I'll rapid fire some stuff. Like when you have kids, you want kids to lead a healthy, like active life. You do it yourself. I'm sure you've seen videos online where it's like kids start working out or doing push-ups because they see their dad do it. Yeah. Or just eating cleaner. Your kids are going to want less sugary stuff because there's like mom and dad, all they eat is fruits, vegetables, like meats. I want to eat that as well. So, and then relationships too. It's like, hey, listen, like I want to work out and I want to get fit. And if I'm always like worrying about my significant other and she's like, oh, I don't want to come out today, I'm like tired, whatever, that slows me down. So it's like now my whole thing is just learn to do things yourself, lead by example, because at one point you're going to look better, talk better, speak better. You're just going to sound better. Your mindset's going to be different. Yeah. And people will see that and be like, I need to do what you're doing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like one question I want to ask you with that is, how do you position it in a way where you're not trying to, like if you, for example, want your significant other to, let's say they like play a lot of, I don't know, video games, for example, and you don't want to like badger on them and say like, hey, stop doing this, because obviously that could lead to like resentment, and like that's obviously something that they enjoy. Like what would be your approach with something like that, where there might be like a challenge or something that they're doing that they want to overcome? Would you just say lead by example, or would you like encourage a different way?
I'll use your example for the video games.
Sure. I heard that on another podcast, but
so the video games one, like I don't play video games myself, but I'm just trying to think about it as like, if I was the girl and my boyfriend or my significant other was playing video games, I would first ask like, hey, is it putting a strain on our relationship? Because I think if it's not putting a strain, then why even bother with it? Yeah. I think communication is big there. So if it is putting a strain, like kind of mention stuff. But if you notice, like with, or like I'll use myself as an example. Like I try to go to the gym as much as I can. Once upon a time, I would always be like, Ange, like let's go, and she'd be like, I can't wake up at that time. I don't want to do that. Whatever it is. So the lead by example is just like, hey, like again, going back to the video thing. If you're starting to go more, like your partner wakes up in the morning, plays video games, like that's the first thing he does, but you wake up every morning and you go for a run. At one point I can guarantee you he'll be playing his video game and he's just like, loser. What am I doing? Like, get off the couch. My girl is super fit, she's getting way better looking, she's healthier, she's looks good. Like just everything about her is just better than what I started dating her with. That's where he's going to click in. He's like, what does she do different than me? Like we live the same life. And it's like, wow, I wake up, I play video games where she goes for runs. Maybe I should start doing that.
Right. Yeah. Leading by example.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that. Kiefer, you have been a pleasure to have on. I've been wanting to talk to you about all this good stuff for quite some time. So thank you so much for coming on. Where can everyone find you if they want to follow you and see what you're up to online? Share what you have going on.
Yeah. I would just say my Instagram. I think that's where it's at. We have so many things going on, but if you want to see the behind the scenes, the progress, it's just Mr. Social Eats on Instagram. And that's basically it.
Love it. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Right,
and you know the drill. Of course. Thank you for coming on. You know the drill. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. It really helps out the show and helps connect us to people who would want to also view this podcast. And we'll talk to you guys next week.